High in the jagged mountains of Afghanistan, a team of Navy SEALs found themselves pinned down. Dust and smoke filled the air, the rattle of enemy gunfire echoing through the valley walls. Their radios crackled with static as the situation grew desperate. Ammunition was running low, and the only thing standing between them and certain death was the hope of air support. Requesting immediate airstrike, the team leader shouted into his headset, his voice sharp but edged with urgency. The SEALs braced themselves, expecting the distant roar of jets and the slow, grinding process of layered bombing runs. They'd been in situations like this before. Usually, it meant holding on for as long as possible until help arrived. But this time was different. Over the mountains came the thunder of a single jet engine. The SEALs looked skyward, blinking through the dust and sun glare. A lone silhouette cut through the sky with a precision and speed that was almost surreal. The voice over the radio came clear and calm, almost too calm for the chaos below. "Valkyrie inbound. Mark the target." The SEALs froze. Valkyrie. They'd heard the call sign before, whispered among pilots and soldiers, a name that carried both awe and disbelief. Some said she was reckless. Others said she was a ghost, appearing in the worst moments and leaving only silence in her wake. But to the SEALs caught in that valley, she was their only hope. A green smoke marker hissed into the air as the team signaled their position. Enemy fire intensified, as if the insurgents knew what was coming. The lone jet screamed overhead, banking with impossible agility, sunlight glinting off her wings. In one devastating pass, her cannons and bombs tore into the valley floor. The mountain trembled as fire and thunder erupted below. And then, silence. The SEALs peeked out from cover, eyes wide. The enemy positions that had pinned them down for hours were gone. Entire fortifications had been erased in the span of a heartbeat. One pass. That was all it took. "Holy," one SEAL muttered, lowering his weapon. Another just shook his head, unable to believe it. "Valkyrie, valley is clear," the team leader reported into his comm, still in shock. "Copy," her voice replied, steady and professional. "Get your men out. You're clear for extraction." But the SEALs weren't ready to let the moment pass. They had to know. "Pilot, who are you?" one of them asked. There was a long pause on the comm. Then a voice, soft but firm. "Just someone who doesn't like leaving good men behind." Back at the airbase, the SEALs got their answer. They expected a grizzled, battle-worn fighter pilot. Instead, stepping down from the jet was a young woman with sharp eyes, a calm presence, and a quiet confidence that didn't need to be announced. Her name was Captain Elena Torres, though almost everyone in the air wing called her Valkyrie. For the SEALs, it was a moment of realization. The legends they had heard weren't just tales told in barracks or whispered around briefing rooms. She was real, and she had just saved their lives. But her story wasn't one of perfection. Elena had fought her way to the cockpit through doubt, through whispers that she wasn't fit for the role, through commanders who underestimated her and peers who dismissed her as reckless. What they didn't see were the nights she stayed after hours, studying terrain maps and combat reports, memorizing patterns, calculating risks others ignored. She flew differently because she thought differently. Where most saw obstacles, she saw paths. Where most pilots relied on procedure, she relied on instinct honed by relentless preparation. And yet, she carried scars, moments where choices weighed on her, missions where she hadn't been able to save everyone. The SEALs saw none of that when she stepped off the jet, but they saw it in her eyes, the weight of someone who understood what her role truly meant. That day in the valley wasn't just a display of skill. It was years of struggle, sacrifice, and relentless willpower compressed into a single pass. When the SEALs returned stateside, they told the story again and again. Not as some tale of impossible firepower, but as a story of someone who showed up when they needed her most. Someone who shattered their expectations. Someone who proved that legends aren't born, they're made in the fire of adversity. And Captain Elena, Valkyrie Torres, she went back to her jet. Back to the sky, because for her, it was never about recognition or glory. It was about the men on the ground, the ones counting on her. The SEALs had called in an airstrike. What they got instead was something greater, proof that courage isn't measured by rank or gender, but by the heart that refuses to quit when everything is on the line. That day, In a valley no one will ever mark on a map, the SEALs witnessed what it meant to be saved in one pass. And they carried that memory, and that respect, for the rest of their lives. The dust hadn't even settled when the SEALs began their trek out of the valley, still shaken by what they had witnessed. They had seen airstrikes before, coordinated runs, sometimes multiple aircraft circling overhead for hours, but what Valkyrie had done didn't feel possible. It felt like something from a story soldiers tell each other at midnight, half in awe, half in disbelief. When they reached their extraction point, silence lingered in the helicopter. No one wanted to be the first to say it, but all of them were thinking the same thing: she saved us. Alone. Back at base, they expected to be debriefed, then moved quickly into the next mission cycle. But instead, the SEALs found themselves pulled into a rare joint briefing with Air Command. The reason became clear the moment Elena Torres walked into the room. She wore her flight suit, helmet under one arm, eyes calm as ever. For a moment, the SEALs just stared, not because of who she was, but because of how ordinary she looked. She wasn't the mythical figure they had built in their minds. She was just a pilot. And yet, when she spoke, her presence filled the room. You all survived because the valley gave me one chance. One pass. That doesn't always happen, and if you think I can do that every time, you're wrong. The SEAL team leader, still raw from the firefight, leaned forward. Maybe not, but we're alive because of you. That's not something we forget. Elena nodded, but her face didn't soften. She carried herself with the heaviness of someone who knew tomorrow's mission could end differently. The SEALs noticed that weight, and for the first time, they saw the truth. Valkyrie wasn't a legend. She was human, and that made what she had done even greater. Weeks passed, and fate threw them together again. Another mission, another valley, different terrain, but the same dangers: insurgents entrenched, ambushes laid in silence. The SEALs pushed forward until, once again, they were trapped. But this time, there was no hesitation on the radio. Requesting air support. Valkyrie, are you in the sky? Her reply came back steady, but different. Quieter, almost strained. Valkyrie copies. But listen closely, I'm low on fuel. I don't have the luxury of circling. The SEALs exchanged glances. They remembered her words from the briefing. One chance. One pass. The team leader clenched his jaw. We'll mark the target. Just give us your best shot. Above them, her jet roared into position. But this time, they saw her take risks that chilled their blood. Flying lower than any pilot should, weaving through ridges where one wrong move would mean impact. She wasn't just fighting the enemy, she was fighting time, fuel, and the mountain itself. The pass came, and once again, the valley shook with thunder. Precision, devastation, silence. The SEALs cheered, but their relief faded as they realized she wasn't climbing back into the sky. Her jet struggled upward, barely clearing the ridge. Over the comms, her voice broke through, sharp but tired. This bird isn't going to make it back to base. I'll be putting her down. You boys get home safe. Negative, Valkyrie. The team leader barked. Give us your location. We're not leaving you. There was a pause, then a quiet laugh, the first they had ever heard from her. You SEALs are stubborn. Copy. Sending coordinates. That night, in the cover of darkness, the SEALs diverted their exfil to a crash site hidden deep in the mountains. There, among the twisted wreckage, they found Elena alive, bloodied but standing, pistol in hand as if daring the mountains themselves to come at her. The moment they reached her, she didn't thank them. She just shook her head. You weren't supposed to come for me. The SEAL team leader stepped forward, gripping her shoulder. You don't get it. You saved us. Twice. Valkyrie or not, you're one of us now. And we don't leave our own behind. For the first time, her eyes softened. The myth the SEALs had built around her cracked, and beneath it, they saw the truth. She wasn't a legend because of her jet or her call sign. She was a legend because she fought, bled, and endured like any of them. When they finally returned to base together, limping but alive, the bond between ground and sky was forever changed. No longer were SEALs and pilots two different worlds. In that valley, they had become one. And though the world would never hear the full story, though reports would call it a successful joint operation, with nothing more than a passing mention of her name. The seals who lived through it carried the truth in their hearts. Legends aren't written in medals or reports. They're written in the eyes of the men and women who survive because someone refused to quit. And Valkyrie, she was more than the pilot who cleared a valley in one pass. She was proof that courage isn't about the machine you fly, but the soul that refuses to go down without a fight. The SEALs thought the story ended in that valley. They thought Valkyrie would remain a memory, the mysterious pilot who appeared from the sky like a force of nature and vanished back into the clouds. But war has a way of pulling the same souls together, again and again. 2 months later, they were back in the mountains, deeper this time, chasing a high-value target who had eluded capture for years. It was supposed to be a clean mission, in, out, minimal contact. But the enemy was waiting. The valley erupted with gunfire and mortars. The SEALs were caught in a deadly trap. Pinned down, their comms filled with frantic voices, the team leader clenched his teeth. "We can't hold this position much longer. Call it in." The radio man hesitated. "Sir, we're too close for standard airstrike protocol." The leader didn't flinch. "Then call Valkyrie." A tense silence followed. Then, through the static, came a voice that sent a shiver down their spines. "Calm, controlled, steady. Valkyrie copies. I'm 30 clicks out. Mark your smoke." Every SEAL glanced at each other. It was her. She was real. And she was coming. Dash dash dash. Her jet roared into the valley minutes later. The SEALs braced, expecting the same devastating precision as before. But something was different this time. The insurgents had prepared for air support. They had mounted heavy anti-aircraft guns along the ridges, waiting to take her down. "Valkyrie, be advised," the team leader shouted. They're dug in with awe. "Too risky." But her voice didn't waver. "I see them. I'll make one pass." The SEALs, hearts pounded as she dove lower, weaving through enemy fire that painted the sky with streaks of smoke and flame. Her jet roared like thunder between the ridges, cannons blazing. Explosions ripped through the valley floor, tearing apart enemy positions in seconds. But the SEALs noticed something terrifying. She wasn't climbing out. She was too low, too close to the ground. Her aircraft scraped the edge of the ridge, sparks flashing. For a moment, every SEAL thought they were watching her final mission. Then, at the last possible second, she pulled up. The jet cleared the ridge by mere feet, trailing smoke. The valley fell silent. The enemy was broken. Valley secure. Her voice came over the comms, rough with strain. "But I'm hit. Losing fuel fast." The SEAL team leader's stomach dropped. "Give us your position. We'll get you out." "No," she replied firmly. "Your mission isn't over. Complete it. I'll manage." But the SEALs didn't listen. For them, there was no question. She had risked everything to save them, again. Now it was their turn. Dash dash dash. Hours later, after finishing their objective under brutal conditions, the team rerouted toward the mountainside where her jet had gone down. The wreckage smoldered, scattered across the rocks. And there she was, Elena Torres, call sign Valkyrie, battered and bleeding but alive, standing guard with her sidearm drawn as if daring the enemy to try again. When the SEALs surrounded her, relief broke through their exhaustion. One of them clapped her on the shoulder. "You're worse than us, you know that. We run into hell on the ground, and you decided to try it in the sky." She gave a tired smile. "Someone has to keep you stubborn idiots alive." For the first time, the SEALs laughed in the middle of a war zone. Dash dash dash. Back at base, command tried to write the incident off as another successful joint operation. But the men who were there knew the truth. She wasn't just a pilot, she was part of them now. They had fought together, bled together, and survived together. And though the world would never see her name in headlines, the SEALs carried it in silence, like a promise. If Valkyrie ever called, they would answer. Because in that valley, under fire and smoke, she had proved something no legend ever could. She wasn't untouchable, she wasn't invincible, she was human, and that made her courage even greater.